Hey teammates, welcome to another episode of It's All About the Team. And we're so fortunate today to have the CEO of Huntington Bank, dear friend, Steve Steinour.
Steve Steinour.
Steven Steinour.
Steve Steinour.
Steven Steinour.
Steve Steinour.
Steven Steinour. He's the CEO of Huntington Bank. Steven, good to have you here with us.
Great to be with you, Carol.
You always want people around you to be smarter, and I can assure you the case with the entire board and management team. Of course, everybody talks every year that they're following in Jim Tressel's footsteps. Travel, see the U.S. I relocated, I think, 8 or 9 times in 2.5 years.
Wow.
Ultimately, one of those locations where I met my wife. Well, Jim, it's great to be with you. It's a privilege to be on the show. Thank you so very, very much. And to have you back in Columbus and to be associated with you, this city is Jim Tressel Town.
Well,
so great to be here.
It's great to be here, and thanks for hosting us right here in your facility. And we were together about a month or so ago with the Pelotonia. And for the viewers, Pelotonia is a fundraising bicycle event for the Ohio State University James Cancer Hospital. And Huntington Bank is the number one contributor to that cause. How many riders did you have?
Well, Jim, this is a special weekend of the year. I think it's the best one of the year. We had 1,300 riders, and we capped out at just over 900 volunteers. And they just didn't need more volunteers, or we would have had more. So we have our colleagues coming in from all around the country. This year alone, we should raise $4 million plus, Huntington, out of a $26-ish million raise. And it's 100% pass through for cancer research because we corporate underwrite the overhead. So this is a 16th year. It's fabulous. And it's just a spiritual weekend to be out and see these people waving to you and thanking you because you're riding for cures cancer for their kids or their spouse or other family members.
And so many of the survivors
That's right.
ride, and I know I rode in the first one.
You set the record, the pace record.
Yeah, right. What year was that been? 2007?
That was 2009.
Okay.
And we raised about $3.8 million. When you think about 2009, all the financial economic stuff, and in Columbus, we launched this. $3.8 million, a really, really outstanding result at that time. But the community embrace has been fantastic ever since. And, of course, everybody talks every year that they're following in Jim Tressel's footsteps.
I didn't train very well for that. I hadn't been on a bike since I was 12, and my rear end was sore, after spending time with that. But the reason I bring that up, because it's special. My mom passed in the James, but they gave her the greatest care you could imagine. Ellen and I have the Tressel Family Fund for Cancer Research at the James. But the real reason is I got to witness your team, and it was incredible. Over 1,000 people there. We went to Huntington Park.
We did, yes.
And we took over the baseball stadium and had fun there. But what was so cool in my mind was how many people you connected with and how many of them from how many different states?
We had about 38 states represented there.
Right. And people, whether they're from Florida or North Carolina or wherever they were from, felt like they were on the team.
Yes.
Felt like they knew the head coach. And so to me, that was awfully special. And I thought, we have to have Steve see if he can add value, because our goal with our podcast, we've partnered with the Youngstown Business Journal with the goal in mind that we want to add value to people who are trying to build teams, whether building their team at home, building their team at their business, their athletic team, their organization, their nonprofit, their church, whatever. And I thought, here's someone that could really add value. I've had a lot of sports figures, and people like to hear from sports figures about building teams. And I think the business side has been very popular as well. And so the way I like to start out is all of us that were blessed to have grown up in a good team should count our blessings every day. And there's nothing more impactful to one's life than the team that they started with. So talk a little bit about Team Steinour that you grew up in. What lessons of team did you learn, as you were coming up through, secondary school, elementary school, on into leaving home for Gettysburg College.
Well, that goes way back. You're talking more than a half century now, Jim. But I had the privilege of playing football in high school, and learned a lot about team sports then, and team building. My senior year, I was a co-captain, so very, very proud. I wish our record was a lot better than it turned out to be, but it was a commitment that was shared, and in sharing that commitment, and we would hold hands in the huddle, which back then you just didn't do. I mean, we were really close, but it set up in my mind just a great set of opportunities about how to engage and how to align with around a common cause. In that case, it was a sport, but as we were talking earlier in terms of Peloton, 1 out of 2 males, 1 out of 3 females are going to get cancer in their lifetime. What a great cause to rally around to try and help people, the vast, vast majority of which we'll never know, will benefit from these cures of cancer. And so to my great relief, because you never really know, I said we were going in 2010, we became a corporate underwriter, and I said we're going to go all in. I didn't know what that meant, and my colleagues, when they were looking at me, what does it mean? And the first year we had 50 riders. The second year we had 900 riders.
Wow!
And we've just grown ever since. So my colleagues are a huge, huge team of really wonderful people. I'm privileged to have the role I have.
Well, being a part of a team, to me, has so much value. And I worry somewhat that in the sports arena, that there's so much discussion of winning and losing. But what you gained from your team, that you said maybe didn't have the greatest season of all, you still gained the same values about being a part of a team, playing the role that needed to be played, being close with people, caring about them, and then it rolls into that's what you do when you're a part of a community. And 50% of the teams lose every Saturday. That's just a reality. But 100% of the teams gain from being a part of that team, and that's one of the things I worry most about as I look at where we've come, especially in the sports world, is that, gosh, if you didn't win the championship, it wasn't a good season. Well, that's not true. Only one team wins the championship, and everyone else had great value and needs to learn those lessons of team. And so you went on from high school, to Gettysburg College.
Yes.
How far from home was that?
Well, I went away to school. It's about 3 miles.
3 miles? Well, I went 1 block from my house at Baldwin Wallace, so I understand
I've now been beaten at this. It's we had the shortest commute possible, but
Right.
although I lived on campus.
Yep. I did too. My parents said, even though my parents' house was on campus, because they didn't pay the college professors anything, but they gave them housing.
Right.
They said, hey, you're not staying here. Pack your bag and walk down the street and get into the dormitory, because that's part of,
That's right.
understanding a team, living in a community. And so what did you study at Gettysburg College?
Well, I started off pre-med. That lasted 1 semester, and then the reality set in. There was no way I was going to make it to med school, so I dropped back, eventually ended up with economics and accounting.
Well, it's interesting. I think back to my 4 years at Baldwin Wallace, and I hope I learned a lot in the courses, but I know that I learned a lot in the team activities that I was a part of. I was on the football team, and I was in a fraternity, and I was on the school newspaper staff. And I think back to the lessons learned in all of those, which were different. It was a different cast of characters in all of those things. And I think I realized that, everyone's important. Didn't matter if they're my football teammates or my fraternity brothers or my co-workers, writers, or photographers or whatever at the school newspaper. And so as you think back, if you could pick one lesson of team you learned at Gettysburg College that has served you well throughout your tremendous career, go back in time for us.
Well, I'll start in high school with one where we
Okay.
had a very, very tough head coach, and his name was John Gasly, and he was all about discipline and hustle and outworking. You never ran a sweep if you could go up the middle. Right? So, but in college, then, what I got to see is the benefit of the joy of learning. Obviously, my med career didn't last, but I found other subjects that I really enjoyed. And I like to think I'm a lifelong learner as a consequence of that. So college for me, first in my family to go to college, was life-changing and one of these just very unique experiences where you can see yourself in a different world. Because again, my family was, I think, 6th or 7th generation in Gettysburg, and it was just assumed I'd be the 8th.
Okay.
And somehow that didn't quite go along the script.
One of the great values, I believe, about having that blessing of going to college, I like to say that a university means unity in diversity. And it's, even though I walked a block down the street and you went 3 miles, all of a sudden you were with a lot of people who were from different places.
That's right.
Who had different beliefs, who had different experiences, came from a different culture. And you realized, you know what? We still have to create this team. We have to create this university. And the people that have that good fortune and pay attention and create that awareness and respect for one another, even though you've never heard of where they're from or you never knew anything about what they're all about and what they believe in or what they prefer, whatever. To me, that's one of the great, just like in high school, getting a part of an activity, whether it's sports or the science club or the marching band or the theater or whatever, to me that's formative.
Absolutely.
Having that experience as you go on to college, I think is just the same. And then all of a sudden, we're out of college, and as you think back, what was it that sent you in the direction you went right out of Gettysburg?
Well, I had some influences while I was at Gettysburg. I also had a cousin who was attending. She was a class or two ahead of me, and she encouraged me to explore study abroad, which for me was just incredible, and opened up a love of travel and learning about other people, cultures, government, etc. So I really enjoyed my time in London. Came back from that my junior year, and a good friend of mine who now runs a very, very successful hotel chain called Montage had encouraged me about taking an economic policy semester in Washington, D.C., which I did and really enjoyed it, especially my time at the U.S. Treasury Department. And in 1980, it was a very unique moment when interest rates were going very, very high.
Yep.
Ultimately, prime was, I think, 21%, to give you some sense. So
Yep.
record-setting even today by a lot. And being in that environment at that time was very stimulating. So I enjoyed D.C., and as I graduated, thought I was going to law school, but ended up at the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. I had a lot of debt, school loans, and had a unique role there, an opportunity to prepay those loans. So I thought I'd do that for a couple of years, travel, see the U.S. I relocated, I think, 8 or 9 times in 2.5 years.
Wow.
Ultimately, one of those locations where I met my wife. And so it's always been good fortune and a willingness to do things a bit different that have helped me.
You know, it's interesting you bring up the prime rate and all that. I graduated from college in 75, so a little bit before you. Got out there in the world and started thinking about buying homes. And my interest rate on my home was 12%, 13%, 14% in my first couple moves. And then I started hearing, people talk here recently about, oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm paying, 4% or 5%, whatever. And I thought, boy, have times changed. And at the time you were at the U.S. Treasury, challenging time, huge operation, right?
Yes.
As you think back to that, can you think back to how the concept of team was attempted to be brought in to that environment?
Well, the Fed chairman, Paul Volcker,
Oh, yeah, sure.
was just a magnificent leader,
Yep.
right man, right time.
Yep.
And in concert with the Treasury Department and the economic advisors, chose to take a very difficult course, which is why those interest rates were so high,
Yep.
21%. My first mortgage was 12 5/8, and I felt fortunate to be able to have it. It was assumable, or I wouldn't have had it.
Wow.
To give you some sense.
Yep.
But they came together as a team. They made tough decisions. Unemployment shot up to double digits, but they broke inflation. And as a consequence, in the next 40 plus years, inflation has not been an issue until very, very recently.
Right, right. So you went from there to the FDIC, and you said you got to travel a lot with that.
Yes.
And so talk to people who have a broad geographic situation on their team. Anything you can think of, and it's probably a little bit like what you do having 38 states or whatever here at Huntington, but what's the key when you're not physically together to try to create that sense of team?
Finding areas of connectivity, and I'll go back to Peloton, for example, because of the pervasiveness of cancer, there's a linkage that's just we've unfortunately all experienced.
Right.
Your mother is an
Yeah.
example. I've had cousins who passed with this. So whatever that linkage is, and it could be in the nature of a business line or a focus on community. We do a lot in the community.
Right.
Wherever you can find those common elements, those common interests, and trying to build from them, I have found to be very helpful, even though you're geographically dispersed. And if you can reach out to individuals, colleagues in this example, and try and connect with them where they are. Don't start with the business issues. Start with how they're doing.
Right.
How's the family?
Yep.
Did they take a vacation somewhere? Where'd they go?
Yep.
Make it personal, and that has always been helpful for me, and in terms of ultimately trying to bring about a more common effort. So listening, and you're a great listener, Jim, and you remember everything. I think you remember everything about every one of your players, which is just remarkable.
I try, but I'm getting older, Steve. So. But speaking of one of my players, we just did a recent episode with Malcolm Jenkins.
Yes.
He won a Super Bowl there at Philadelphia, and he was saying much of the same things in that what he's grown to believe as he's, he was this great college player and then two-time Super Bowl winner and so forth, but what he's grown to understand is who we are and how we can relate is way more important than what we do. And we always felt that, just as you said, is the key to building a team. It isn't solely about the performance, because we all have measuring sticks. Football is a different measuring stick than a bank. But it's the people. It's what is important to them. Who are they? And when you're so dispersed, that's what was interesting to me is I always had it pretty good. I had 100 guys. They were on campus. I had a dozen coaches, and we were always in proximity, and we'd run into each other in the hallway, or we constantly together. And then I was at a university that was a little bit larger, even though we were in the same city, Youngstown State, but still there were 12,000 students and 2,000 employees, and you're not in the same proximity. And how could you find ways to help people understand that you're interested in them as a human and not just in the job they do?
Well, I think this comes back to how you've done it in the past. You connect with the individual, with their family.
Yep.
The Malcolm story you shared with me before we went on air about his mother giving the coaching staff a billiards lesson.
That's right.
In your home was an example. The work is important. It has to get done.
Right.
But it really matters how it gets done. And for, in our case, our colleagues to understand why we're doing what we're doing. They may not agree with it,
Yeah.
but the effort to extend the intent, I think, is really helpful. And for many, you'll come to a common understanding, and that's what makes this fun. So I have the pleasure of leading 20,000 colleagues, and
Wow.
and we're growing, and it's just a wonderful situation. We didn't have 20,000 people in the town I grew up with. I think we had
Wow.
like 3,000. So this is all just
You know,
every
they-
day is amazing.
They feel as if they know you, and you care about them. And we talked as a staff forever that they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yes.
And where I was just blown away seeing your group together, over 1,000 people, feeling like they knew each other,
Yes.
even though they might have been from different states. They might only get together once a year, whatever. But they all felt like they knew you and some of your top lieutenants and so forth. And so I did a little bit of homework. I want to make sure that I'm accurate. You then went to the Bank of New England?
Yes.
Okay. So how do you build a team, or what did you learn about building teams in that stop?
Well, that was my first endeavor in business, and so again, everything new to me, no experience. I couldn't get any sort of advice, and from my parents, they didn't have a common experience. So fortunately, a number of people helped me during my career. There were a couple of mentors, and so I was able to see and learn how to be a business manager, and I had a lot to learn. I still do.
Well, yeah.
I still do, but that unfortunately that bank ultimately failed because of a management team that didn't operate as a team, and it was very dysfunctional and destructive, and I was very young in my career, 30, 31, but seeing older people who'd devoted their careers to that institution, had their 401ks in that bank stock, and it failed, was scarring to me.
Yeah.
And I made a sort of a vow, if I ever had the opportunity to be in a leadership position somewhere, I would always take into account the responsibility that we had, not just to the shareholders, certainly to them, but to our colleagues who are shareholders, because they've put life savings into it.
Well, and I learned more lessons from some of my tough losses and some of the things than the victories.
Well, you didn't have many losses,
But the ones we had were hurt. There's no doubt. So after that experience, did you go on to Fleet?
The Bank of New England failed. I went to Fleet,
Okay.
and then to a little bank called Citizens.
Okay.
And
that's when you first became a president.
I was an executive vice president going into Citizens.
Okay.
Which was just a wonderful experience. Another great friend and mentor, Larry Fish, who looked out for me throughout my career, gave me more opportunities than I deserved, and was always there to sort of dust me off and point me in the right direction. But I was just at Larry's 80th birthday, and still have these wonderful life lessons from my friend, and I call him my coach.
Yeah.
So,
right. Well, that's a great lesson for the viewers, that how many of our guests have come on and talked about someone that made a difference, like a mentor or a coach or a faculty member. And how many times have we talked about, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. Who you're around sure is going to impact your ability to be on a good team and have those experiences. And so then after Citizens was here?
A little side stop
Okay.
with a private equity group in Boston called
Okay.
Cross Harbor Capital, but that was brief. And then to Huntington. Our board made a mistake 15 years ago, so I'm.
Well, I was here when you came, and
You were.
Ohio is a very tight-knit place. And I remember some comments early on, well, this guy's from Philadelphia, and this and that. And boy, were they shocked when they saw what you've done in the last 15 years. But sometimes teams get a little parochial, but when you communicate like you do and you make a difference, and then they saw who you were, not just what you do, not just where you're from, but who you are, to me, it's been one of the great success stories. I've told many people about you coming into town. Not many people knew who you were. I remember when I came into town at Ohio State, I was from Division I AA, Youngstown State. Like, who's coming in here? We need someone from wherever. And so as you came to town in an operation that Huntington is so important for Columbus, Ohio. I mean, it's one of our anchors. So you came in not knowing people, knowing you wanted to build a team. Take us through some of the things you did to get us to the point where we are now.
Well, 2009 was very difficult in our industry. It was very difficult for Huntington. So in meeting the team I inherited and was blessed to be able to work with many of these fine people and talented executives, we as we came together, it was with a determination that we were going to succeed and get through this credit cycle, this economic tsunami, a 100-year sort of tsunami, and we had issues to deal with, and so we worked very hard to deal with those as a team, and certainly my role, sort of leading that, was important. And I'm a big believer in leaders lead, so I turn the lights on and I turn them off.
Yep.
And we went 7 days a week until Memorial Day in 2009.
Wow.
And but at that point, we felt we had it in a position where we were turning the quarter, and we could see our future. And to our board's credit, they supported a very ambitious management plan that was very different than what the industry was doing, and it caused a breakout moment. And you've had teams that have had breakout games and stages, and for us that was an inflection point, and one, as I look back on, is one of the telltales of why we're here today at about 4 times the size we were in 2009.
Well, when you all get together and work like crazy and make things happen, the feeling that you have about being on a team that's progressing, I don't know if there's any better feeling.
Well, there's that and the sense of self-satisfaction, but there were also tough moments. There were hard conversations.
Right.
You and I have talked about that when you have to, in your case, tell a player really what you're thinking about them, and I had a number of those instances as well.
Sure.
And I probably, because we were working all the time, wasn't nearly as gracious or grateful in my expressions at that stage. It was like, let's just get to the next day. Let's keep the doors open and get to the next at some point.
Wow. It's been incredible. Give us just a 30-second commercial about what Huntington is today, because I know in our region, Huntington's a great partner. I know I'm living in Medina and Cleveland region, and as I listen, 38 states. Just give us a quick 30-second commercial about Huntington and what you're very proud of.
Well, I'm most proud about my colleagues, what they do every day to help people and to strengthen the communities we live in. But we're a super regional bank. We're very large in the Midwest. We have operations as far west as Colorado, and now going south through the Carolinas, and then in these 38 states we have some clusters like Dallas, Texas. But we do a lot of business with consumers and small businesses, and as well as larger businesses. We have a full range of products and capabilities, and we're very relationship-based. We believe we're in a people business. Our product is money or service. We need to give great service. We take that sincerely as a point of accountability, a point of responsibility, and strive very hard to do that.
So what do you look for in a team member as you're building your various locations? What are the people ask me all the time, what did you look for in a recruit?
Right.
What do you look for in a team member at Huntington?
Well, there has to be a certain capacity to do the job as a given. So I won't spend time there. Beyond that, it's the fit. When we talk about our purpose of looking out for people, helping them lead better lives, making the community stronger, helping businesses thrive, if that's not resonating, and for some people, it's pretty transparent. That's not what they're in the game for. That's the end of the discussion. We won't waste time. If our values are not in alignment, it's not a fit.
Yeah.
We're very much a relationship company, both internally and externally. So when times get hard, that's when our customers really need us. We need to be there with strength, stability, and sustain them to the maximum extent we can, help them get through it. So we do this in a variety of ways. I'm very proud of, I say we, my colleagues do all the work. I'm very proud of them.
Hey teammates, I want to tell you about a project we're working on with Youngstown State University. One of the ways Ellen and I have decided to give back is through the Trestle Institute for Leadership and Teamwork. We've collected a set of successful business and nonprofit leaders to serve as guest servant leaders in partnership with the Sokolov Honors College to teach university students teamwork, leadership, and personal skills. We teach from a foundation built on gratitude, excellence, hope, love, and selflessness. If you're a young person or parent helping to search for a unique college experience, you can learn more at trestleinstitute.ysu.edu or ysu.edu. Links will be provided in the show notes. Well, it's not unlike, I think back to hiring coaches. And it wasn't always about their X and O wizardry or their being a guru or a genius. I wanted to know, do they love those kids? Do they believe in the things that we do? Do they have the vision for what we would like to be? And certainly they needed to be able to coach and so forth. Right. But most important is, who are they as people? And I think that's so critical, as you're building your team, is have the right kind of people that have your vision and your mission. So one of the things I learned when I became a president, our board of trustees, and I thank them so much, sent me to New President School. And I went to Harvard, spent 6 days, and one of the real lessons I learned in New President School was, you better have a great board who can bring you expertise, who can challenge you, who you can bounce things off, who really love what it is they're on the board of. And it was one of the things that I took out of there, and I was so lucky at Youngstown State. At the state universities, the governor appoints board members, and whether it was Governor Kasich or Governor DeWine in my era there as president of Youngstown State, I couldn't have been more blessed with the people that they appointed. And much of what we were able to accomplish was picking their brain, being challenged by them, working hard to help them understand what our problems were, and hey, can you give us some solutions? So one of the things I noticed as I was studying Steve Steinour was the commitment you've made to help others in the community, on boards and so forth. And so I kind of listed them down. I was like, wow, that's like the who's who of boards. And I hope you weren't on all of them at the same time, because I know how much time our board members spent, making sure they understood all of the data that they needed to and so forth. But let's start with Battelle. As you think back to having that team of board members and then that team at Battelle, and maybe give our listeners a little impact of what Battelle does. Even a lot of people that live in Central Ohio don't know some of the great things, but talk a little bit about your time on the board with Battelle.
Well, I've been on the board about 3 years. Battelle Memorial Institute is a nonprofit that was set up, a tax-exempt, I should say, set up by Gordon Battelle nearly a century ago to do fundamental scientific research and to better the understanding and teaching of science. Today, it's just under a $13 billion revenue organization. It manages or is responsible for administering 8 of the national labs, and it has a very sizable research component that it directly is responsible for, some of which would be public and some of which would be for government entities and in the classified realm. But they've done remarkable things. They discovered Xerox going back now, and xerography and how that's progressed, and many, many other discoveries along the way. The CEO there, Lou Von Thaer, is world class. There's a tremendous board. You know, it's nice. You always want people around you to be smarter, and that's, I can assure you, the case with the entire board and management team. So for me, it's like going to Disneyland. I try to understand what they're talking about in science and other fields, and I'm naturally curious. And it's just been a wonderful exposure. I feel deeply honored to be able to participate and hopefully contribute in some small ways to Battelle.
And it's so impactful on our entire nation.
It is.
I remember I came here in 2001 as the head coach, and right after our first game was 9/11.
Right.
Well, then, of course, security at everything was ramped up. And when you have 106,000 people at a stadium, that was a high security, especially in that season. And I'll never forget when they talked about the fact of the corridor from Battelle to Ohio Stadium on a game. This is on a game day. Battelle to Ohio Stadium to Chemical Abstracts, which is where the first Pelotonia started, by the way. We were right in the parking lot there. Was like the 3rd or 4th highest security concern on a game day because of Battelle and Chemical Abstracts and all that they mean to this country. And to be on a board that has such impact nationwide, worldwide, I'm sure, has to be a heck of a thrill, and I'm sure a great learning curve.
Oh, it's a tremendous one. Remember, I flunked pre-med.
Right, and now you're with the great researchers in the world.
The former CEO of Eli Lilly is one of the board members, so
wow.
I have to really ask him to slow it down and make it simple for me to understand.
Oh, man.
But that research, so you think about 9/11, and we all go through airport security now. There's a device that, you know, you raise your arms and it swivels around.
Yep.
Battelle made that.
Wow.
There was remember that oil well that blew out like 8 years ago in the Gulf and was spewing oil?
Yeah.
They had a picture of that live streaming.
Yep.
The submersible was Battelle. So I could go on and on. It's just a remarkable institution.
It's something. Another one that I thought was pretty cool that you've served on the board is the National Veterans Memorial.
Right.
Talk a little bit about the fun of being on that team.
It's been a great team. Now, I've since rotated off because I have been overboarded, but was there at the founding, and we came together as a community, a business community, and we all put funding in place, multi-year funding, to build that institution, and it's remarkable. It's the one of its kind in terms of national Veterans Museum, and a great source of pride. My father served in the Air Force, and for all those men and women who serve, or family members who support spouses or parents or others, it's great to have that here in the community, and it's a true treasure.
Well, and, you know, and as we progress beyond the great wars in World War I, World War II, of course we've had conflicts, but not to the magnitude that the younger generations aren't quite as aware. They read it in the history books, but they don't feel it. Like, you know, I tell the story all the time that my dad was playing football here at Ohio State and enlisted and never got to come back. You know, but that was what that generation was all about. And to make sure we never forget the people that have given us the chance to be free and build teams and all the rest is so critical.
Well, those veterans are so amazing. I had the privilege of being with George H.W. Bush 41 at on a couple of occasions, and one of those was the National Constitution Museum in Philadelphia, and we were walking he actually had to get to stage, and he was a bit late. But he stopped to every man and woman in service uniform and thanked them. And in his speech, he commented about how he was fortunate enough to have survived, but he thinks about it every day because he was in a plane, and his partner in the plane did not make it through.
Wow.
So you see these extraordinary people, and fortunately I've been exposed to a few in my lifetime, and what an impact they have. So because of the way he looked at veterans, it influenced me significantly when the National Veterans Museum discussion came to life with the funding and the start of that museum.
Wow. So as we talk about teams, one of the boards that you served on is the ultimate example of a team, and that's Columbus Partnership.
Yes.
And talk to our viewers, some of which are in regions that have some good partnerships going, and some are in regions that are trying to develop those partnerships. Talk a little bit about your time with the Columbus Partnership and how they've built that team.
Well, this is a real credit to Les Wexner and the late John Wolfe, who founded the partnership with the kernel of an idea about trying to build economic development, growth, and prosperity here in Central Ohio, Columbus and Central Ohio. And boy, were they successful. And over time, it went from a few to a dozen to 2 dozen. It's 82 members now.
Wow.
And there's an economic development organization that's a subsidiary of it called One Columbus, really focused on economic development. But when you think of all the elements of making a community really good, security, transportation, schools,
Water, all that, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
This partnership is focused on those big issues. And our vision is to make Columbus the most prosperous region for all in the U.S. And we've got a lot of work to do.
Sure.
Because there are a lot of people in neighborhoods of need, and just a lot of issues to deal with. But as a business community, the collaboration, this willingness to take it on, and come together is somewhat unique, and it's a privilege to be part of the Columbus Partnership.
You know, you bring up one of the things we've talked often about with guests, and is you can't really build the team without understanding that everyone on the team is important.
That's right.
And it's not just the hierarchy. Every single person in football, it was the scout team guy that never gets in the game but gives us a great look and encourages the heck out of the sideline during the game, and who might not be on a scholarship, but we're going to try to find ways to make their life better. And that's so critical when you're trying to develop a region, and the opportunities Central Ohio has right now are extraordinary. Usually when the opportunities become extraordinary, the challenges grow right along with it.
Right.
And having that partnership of people working together, that's going to be the key. I think the last I heard, we were the fastest growing city in America this past year, Columbus, is that right?
Second half of last year, and I think first half of this year.
Okay.
Yes.
And Columbus is about the 14th largest city in the country?
Yes.
And
You really prepared for this,
but
Jim.
when I was growing up, Columbus was a small town.
Right.
Cleveland was like the 7th biggest city, and things change, opportunities happen, and whether we're in a place that maybe we're not as big as we used to be, partnership is still even maybe more critical.
That's right.
Or if you're in a place that might have today more opportunities than they've ever had, having that partnership. And so what's the dynamics? So when you say 82, you mean 82 on the board?
82 companies.
82 companies.
Are members of the
Of
partnership.
the partnership. How many are on that board?
Well, all 82 have a seat.
Okay. So how do you get 82 people working as a team?
Well, part of this is what Les and John instilled in terms of what's called the Columbus Way. It's an effort to collectively collaborate. Now, not everybody does everything, but as when we stack hands and say, these are the things we're going to do together. Many of them will participate, but there's a power in saying 82, just in the
Yep.
ability to say 82 of the largest employers here in Central Ohio. So it's much like you had at Youngstown. What you did with the Youngstown State University, with Youngstown Business Incubator, you changed a city that was still on a downward spiral and had a number of tough decades,
Yep.
and you reinvigorated it. You caused them to believe. And YBI has done great things in terms of attracting companies, but you brought Youngstown State into the fore throughout the state and beyond with the agenda you had. You had a vision for the university, and you drove that. You worked it 7 days a week. I remember seeing you up there, and great things have happened now in Youngstown.
Well, every one of the partners has got to be pulling the oars, right?
That's right.
And every other one is important. And that's probably the thing that I learned so much in coaching is you can be one player on the defense and have an assignment, and you better do your assignment, but you better understand you need all the other 10 to be in their gap or in their zone or in their pass rush lane or whatever. And that's no different in a region, right? We have to all play our role. And you mentioned Mr. Wolf and Mr. Wexner. You were on the board at the Ohio State Wexner Medical Center, or still are?
I still am, yes.
Yeah. Talk about a large operation and some amazing building that's being. Every time I come to the campus, I feel like it's a different campus over there on the south end where all the medical facilities are. Talk about building a team of that magnitude that's serving people at the hardest times of their life.
Well, the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center is one of the gems in the country, I believe, and its affiliate, the James Cancer Hospital, is another example of that. These have incredible staff, docs, faculty, and they're a tertiary, quaternary source of medical support for the community. If we didn't have them, we'd be in desperate shape. And they do wonderful things for, it's got the largest college of medicine in the state. And so on a variety of fronts, they are a powerful force, $4.5 billion revenue base. The new hospital you alluded to is just under $2.3 billion.
Yeah. Amazing.
$2.3 billion, 4 years to build and amp up.
Yeah.
And
the creativity, having the patients and the research and things on the same floor,
right.
kind of just, it's amazing. So as you're sitting in a board meeting like that, how many are on a board at the medical center or on your board?
There are a little over 20 on the board.
Okay.
But there's a fairly structured agenda that Les has built over the years, along with university medical management. So of course you do the financials and other things, but you look at things like patient healthcare records. They're so large. There are multiple specialties, and trying to learn about what's going on in those specialties. And because it's an academic medical center, what's the research focus?
Right.
Where is it going? What do they need? On the cancer front, the Peloton Immuno-Oncology Institute, one of the best in the world, as a consequence of concerted effort, riding a bike one weekend a year for 15 years and raising $325, $340 million.
Wow.
And that's community. That's all of us.
Yep.
And that's this teamwork, as you were alluding to.
And what's pretty cool is that you and Huntington have been willing to be a part of not just your own team, you have your own scoreboard, but making a difference to those other teams, and that's, to me, what it's all about. And let me get to one other one, the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland. You've been on their board or are on their board?
Well, I have been on their board. They have terms.
Okay.
And they lowered standards, admitted me, but I've fulfilled my duties and my term is over.
So let me ask you two more questions that we have listeners all over the place. I think we have a lot in Ohio. You were in Philadelphia. What made you believe in Ohio? What made you think that, you know what, I can go and I can be a part of a great team and we can do great things in Ohio?
Well, I had never spent an overnight here in Columbus that I recall until the recruiting started at Huntington. But I grew up in a little town, an agricultural community. There were a lot of similarities, although the scale very different. But I appreciated the values and how people treated each other, and that's what I was familiar with as a child, and I like that. And I felt the bank, with over 140 years of history, was at a critical moment, and I felt I could possibly make a difference. So again, the board made the mistake, but I jumped in.
You bet. So here's my last question. So you've been renowned for your charitable activities, you and the bank.
It's the bank.
And in my research, I noticed that Patty, way back, had started an unusual charitable interest. And so talk a little bit about, first tell our viewers where you met her. You said you met her on one of your stops. So tell us where you met Patty, and then brag on her a little bit about her impact on the charitable world.
Well, I met her in October of '82. It was a blind date. I was working then in Puerto Rico. She was visiting a friend.
You were
a
working in
college
Puerto
friend.
Rico?
I was working in Puerto Rico. So I relocated every couple of months. And fortunately, her vision didn't get restored until we went down the aisle. So things have worked out for us. But she is she's a wonderful woman, 38 years of marriage in a couple of weeks. And we feel very, very blessed. And one of her passions has been to try and help, discreetly help people. So we're in a position where we can give to charitable causes, and we do that. But she likes to make it a direct aspect. And so she started 25 years ago, 30 years ago. We were then living in Rhode Island, bringing together a group of women. They would all contribute a certain amount of money, whatever they wanted to. There's no expectation. She never registered as a nonprofit. Just everybody did their out of pocket. There wasn't a tax benefit for doing it, and I think she's probably helped 200-300 families.
Wow.
And it's always one family or one person at a time since then.
Yep.
And so very, very proud of her.
Has she gotten to know them, or?
In some cases,
Okay,
but
yeah.
not in all.
Yeah.
And she's she normally will get a letter, a card of thanks
Yep.
that she shares then with the group, and gets the self-satisfaction of hearing whatever that money was. Usually there's an intent for it,
Yep.
how that was used and how that helped them.
Wow.
Everybody needs a little. Not everybody. Many people need a little boost at a certain stage or
Right.
time, and if you're in a position to help provide that boost, it's a wonderful feeling. So I'm very proud of
And the
her.
message that she cares about them.
That's right.
That's
Not-
as
not just-
valuable as the
Not
financial
just-
help.
That's right. But not just she, a host of women.
Yeah.
She's the convener.
Yep.
But
Pretty
there are a
cool.
lot of people who care about others in our society, and so it's been a wonderful journey for her, and I'm again very proud of her, and feel very blessed that she in fact was blind when we had the blind date. I'm being a
Can't
little
let
facetious.
you go. Can't let you go without asking you about this new partnership with the Cleveland Browns.
Right. Well,
I grew up there in Cleveland. I used to hold the ball for Lou Groza when he was kicking in his training. So I'm a Browns guy from 60 years. It's exciting. Tell us
It's
about it.
incredibly exciting. So, first of all, Dee and Jimmy Haslam are really good people, and they run a great organization, Haslam Sports. The Browns are part of that, an important part, the biggest part. But they also are very charitable. So they have a charity to try and keep high school students in school called Stay in the Game. I thought you'd appreciate that. Stay in the Game looks like it's going to go statewide. It's having an impact.
Right.
And so that's just one of many, many things they do. They're also, a couple of months ago, they gave a few $1 million, several $1 million, I shouldn't say few, several $1 million, to Peloton and the James for
Wow.
cancer, a focused cancer research effort. So they're very charitable. They're great people. You know Jimmy, the intensity. You don't talk to him during the game or when he's
Right.
walking the sidelines.
Yeah.
But after that, heart of gold, very accomplished businessman, and a great family. And Dee and Jimmy have done a lot for Columbus. When the crew was
Right.
leaving,
Yeah.
they are the major owners of the crew.
And they stepped up.
They stepped up. We at the partnership, Alex Fisher, a couple of us were involved with trying to save the crew. And I really credit Alex for the community side of this. The Edwards family, Jeff and Pete Edwards stepped up in a big way, but Jimmy and Dee really came in a powerful way. It's the new stadium here is phenomenal. There's a great fan base now for Major League Soccer. Another impact of the partnership, but essentially the community coming together and welcoming the Haslams.
Yep. Well, you know, it's been a thrill to have someone who came to our home state and has made a difference and wanted to be a part of the team and do whatever role you could play in the team. And it's just a reminder for our viewers that there's nothing great that happens without us working together.
Well, that's true. And, you know, every day I'm blessed. I have 20,000 colleagues who are my teammates. And fortunately for me, they do all the work.
Well,
So thank you, Jim.
for Steve Steinour, Huntington Bank, and myself, just remember, it's all about the team. We'll see you next time.